Chris Verno, part of the Ringer. Great Memphis Grizzlies coverage over the years. The Mismatch with Kevin. We're fans, and I'm a huge fan of your team now, man. Like I said, I don't know which part of the text thread or it was off to the side, but it dawned on me a few weeks ago. I love watching Memphis play. They are connected. They are selfless. Everybody's very kind of accepting of where their role is. And now that Ja is back, and this is also without Dylan Brooks, it provides you another scoring option and a matchup stuff, and he can foul the shit out of people and defend and all that kind of stuff. But they get that win last night against Cleveland. I saw your tweet this morning. That was a spirited game. It was a lot of fun, and Ja's taken a leap. So let me just start with just handing the baton to you of what it is like for you to have covered this team for so many years and now see this version of a young team sitting there as a 4 seed in the West.
Yeah, I think this is so far surpassed everybody's expectation of what they were going to be. Now, this is the first time in a long time. The Grizzlies were typically chronically underrated by the media coming into the season. But this was the first time in a long time, given what they had done against Utah last year in the playoffs, and people started to really like them, and Morant had some spectacular games in the playoffs, that we thought they were properly seeded in terms of where everybody thought they were going to be, which is you're probably not one of the top 6 teams, but you're probably somewhere, hopefully 7 or 8. You could fight for that and not have to play yourself into the playoffs again, but that you're 7, 8, 9, 10, you're in that mix with everybody else. Those are your peers. And so now, unbelievably, they were underrated again. I don't get how this happens, but it happened for so many years during the playoff run. And now this year, once we thought that, it was totally reasonable where everybody thought they would be, and that was the trajectory of where they are in the building process. Now they have outperformed every expectation. There's no question.
As I said in the open here, this leap by Ja is serious. Like, we knew he was good. I think there was still some rumblings, though, too. If you asked around, and I don't know what kind of information you would get on it, because I think people might be a little worried to criticize Ja with you, is that there were some circles, I think, even the beginning of last year, it's like, is he a little overrated, though? Is he this big stat guy who kind of just ISOs a million times, doesn't play defense? And, if you have the ball enough, you're going to put up numbers in this league. But the shooting numbers, as I mentioned again in the open, this is a more significant statistical jump than I think people realize.
Yeah.
And I know I mentioned the defensive stats where they were the worst team in the league when he went out. Then they were the best team. And now they're like 10th since he's been back. And again, that's without Brooks. So, I thought that those were extreme numbers. I don't know that they were all that telling. I'm not telling you Ja's Gary Payton either. But now that they're back and they're winning these games, I just feel like nationally it's just started to pick up this week. People realizing, do you understand where his numbers are at? Because this is beyond anything he's ever done.
Yeah, 2 things. First of all, on the defensive numbers, I think that there was a lot of things that came into play with his time out and then them being so good during his time out. They had the worst defensive rating in the entire NBA when he went out, as you mentioned, right? They had also had teams had hit a higher percentage of 3-pointers against them than anybody in the league. Teams shot over 40% from 3. So the fact that they were kind of hovering around 500 at that point, given that teams were shooting 40% from 3, was actually cause for some amount of hope. And then you have Dylan Brooks coming back, and he and Jaren Jackson as a tandem coming back. That was going to help defensively, and that kind of happened right when Ja was out. And the other thing was Zaire Williams got hurt, and he was getting real rotation minutes. And the cost of playing rookies is sometimes taking a big step back. I don't want to lay it all on being the worst defensive team, but I just think there were a lot of components to why they have gone from 30th in the NBA in defense to first in defense in the month of December. Now, his leap, I think we've seen this before. And my buddy Chris Harrington, who's an outstanding NBA writer for the Daily Memphian, chronicled this going into last season, and probably people looked at it and either rolled their eyes or just didn't want to hear it. But he was writing about the expectation for Ja Morant in his second year. And he likened it to many guys in the past. We were so prisoners of the moment with these crazy leaps that somebody like Luka took or somebody like Trae Young took, leading their teams in year number 2 that we lost sight of what is generally true, and this was true of Derrick Rose, this was true of Russell Westbrook, this was true of Chris Paul, this was true of John Wall. Go back and look at all of those guys, and it was year 3. Damian Lillard and Steph Curry, it was year 4 for those guys, and they were a little bit older than the guys that I had just mentioned. Kyrie Irving, it was like year 6 that he made his biggest leap. So I think one of the things that happens is if you are an amazing point guard right from the jump, and all those guys were, right? Rose, Westbrook, Paul, Wall, you name it. A lot of them won Rookie of the Year. The next year, you now are at the top of the chalkboard, as I say. You've been in a million visiting locker rooms. When you walk into a visiting locker room before the game, there's the thing they want to stop. And once you only get to take the league by storm once. And then that next year, now all of a sudden, they're guarding you differently. Now all of a sudden, when the Grizzlies came out last season, DeAndre Hunter is the guy that's guarding Ja Morant, not Trae Young. They're hiding Trae Young on whoever the shooting guard is at the moment. And that happened over and over again. Kelly Oubre is guarding Ja Morant when you play the Warriors, like over and over again. And they're blitzing you. And they're standing 10 feet away from you when it's time to shoot. And so now the guys that are worth their salt, or the guys that are truly going to become superstars, they go back into the lab in the offseason, they put in the work. They say, all right, here's what I'm going to do when they defend me this way. Here's what I'm going to do when I defend them this way. And I'm going to make it a point that they're not going to be able to stand 10 feet away from me and just say, shoot it, bro. And he did all of those things. And now it is added up to him being, on most nights, totally unstoppable.
Yeah, the blitzing thing is interesting because we're seeing more of it and even more of a sellout. I mean, look, blitzing has been around forever. High pick and roll, make your decision on the blitz, and it's always usually, but then there was like a blitz and recover thing. And I always felt like, eventually if the team was decent, they'd expose the hell out of you. Now it's just the blitz where they're staying with you, and then it's kind of up to you. And I think what Ja does, one, is he turns the corner probably as well as anybody. Even though I would never, I don't know. I shouldn't say it this way. Like, peak Russ end-to-end is insane. Yeah. John Wall end-to-end was
a lot of those guys I mentioned. Rose, too. I mean, there's a lot of those athletes that Ja was compared to, right? These super athletes at point guard. And I find it interesting that so many of them, it was year 3 that they kind of took their big leap.
Well, he's taken that because when I watch him, too, I just feel like you're so helpless because he'll reset against the blitz, he'll reset against it and be like, all right, okay, cool, but I'm not giving up my dribble the way you want me to right now. And then the second you think you're kind of lost in your defensive decision, then I'm going to kill you. I mean, he did it on the layup where he scored, where he got the perimeter guy, and the perimeter kind of caught back up to him because there's also this other thing. Like I used to love with peak Steve Nash, where Nash would dribble into the paint and everybody would freak out because they didn't know what to do. And they'd be likely to run away from him to close out for those prime Phoenix teams. And with Ja, you just see these really, like even good defensive players just stopping. Like they don't want to move first. Yeah. They don't want to reach. They don't want to go up. They want to wait. And he has everybody at their mercy right now, no matter where he's attacking from. And I mean, that's just a scary place to be as a player.
Well, because now if he can make those shots, and he shot the 3-pointer really well. If he can, now if you give him space, he's either going to shoot it or he's going to use that space as a runway. And now you can't go backwards faster than he can go forwards, right? And the other thing is they've done a lot to help him. You sent me a clip last night of a Steven Adams play, and I think it's indicative of a lot of things that have happened this year, which is, they were criticized for taking Adams when they moved off of Valanciunas. But one of the things that has helped is as a screener, and also they use him sometimes almost in that Draymond role, which is what, last year, it's what Wiseman can't do. And that's what was hard about playing Wiseman, because there's only so few guys that when you've got this dynamic guard like they have Curry in Golden State, that if you have somebody that once you bring that double team that you can throw it off to, it can make a play from the elbow, now you've become even more devastating. And Adams has really helped that in a massive, massive way. People die on his screens, and he is just a much better passer than I ever thought he was.
He's a really good passer. The clip I sent, for those who are wondering, is just actually the part of Adams that drives me crazy, even though I would want him on my team, is that he can be at the rim, and then he threw it to the corner for three. Now, you could argue, well, he's going at Mobley. I'm like, yeah, but if my guy's 7'1", then but I always, like, it's kind of, and I know you hate this, but I think Westbrook up Adams, where Adams would get the ball, and it was like, no, you're not supposed to take a layup, dude. You're supposed to throw it back out to me 35 feet away from
He did also make him millions of dollars. Come on.
There's two other things then, because the Jackson part of this, the best version of Jaren Jackson is scary too.
Yeah.
Because he was doing it again last night, where he puts the ball on the floor, and you're like, oh, wait. This is why this guy was just kind of given the extension out of nowhere. And, people can knock, all right, where are you at defensively? Well, defensively, he's just such a versatile option. You could do 5 out with him if you want to go big, but it's kind of small, right? Defensively, I actually think he does impact the game. And then the way he can be like, I actually don't need a guard to get me the ball. Like, I'll create and get there on my own, even if the rebounding isn't necessarily what you want. But again, you live with him essentially as a coverage guy for this team. Where is he now, kind of getting through what's been a bumpy start to a career that's shown a lot of flashes?
Yeah, I think that people have lost sight of, how good he was his rookie year. Then he was outstanding in the bubble before he tore up his knee. And most importantly, that people lose sight of is he is younger than Ja Morant. Like, give him some time. You know what I mean? Like, he is, every year you see more and more of what he can do. And I do think that, we take whoever is the guy, like Mobley. We watched him last night. This is just an incredibly special talent. There's no way around it. And he's immediately awesome, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to be immediately awesome. Like, that's special. A lot of these guys, it takes them a couple of years. And I'm not saying that he's going to end up being, the best player in the world like Giannis. But if you would have taken, Jaren Jackson was a reclassified kid who, as I mentioned, is now still younger than Morant. So wherever he is in his trajectory right now is not a bad place at all when you consider his age. To me, I think we want things to happen rather quickly. I think that every once in a while you see these glimpses of what can be an intensely special player in the NBA. And he has struggled offensively. There's no way around that. But I am a believer in that kid. And as you mentioned, he is a devastating defender. He really covers just so much area and blocks so many shots. And there's no stat that can account for guys not driving because he's standing there with a 20-foot wingspan.
Yeah, I think he just offers you, hey, do you want to go big and keep Adams? But you can have Jackson. You can have Jackson switch and survive against a lot of different options. The Bane
he also
part
has
of this,
to be honored past the 3-point line.
And
he's 7 foot tall. You know what I mean? Like,
right. I could spend probably 30 minutes on Desmond Bane and what he's meant to this team, but you already understand it. And look, even Tyus Jones has played, decent minutes. And then Zaire hit a couple threes last night. There's depth to this team. It is all still kind of young. A 4 seed's probably their peak, I would imagine, with Utah, Phoenix, and Golden State ahead of them. How does this, you're with it all the time. The coaching is terrific too, on top of everything else. What's the part of this that concerns you then?
I think that just like everything, with this season, they have been able to lose guys for an amount of time, but you also don't want to dwell in that. You know what I mean? You don't want that to be your injury. You know what I mean? Like, that's what worries me. and injury to major pieces. Yes, they were able to withstand Ja Morant being out, but Jaren Jackson has, we're knocking on wood that this can be the year that he plays 70 games in a season. He has not made it through a season so far in the first 3 years. And you can look at the numbers, and he is, critical to what they do. He's critical, both ends. The offense, the defense, both are much, much better when Jaren Jackson is on the court. And with this current version of the team, there is no replacing him. They have been able to do it without him, but they don't have another stretch the floor big. And so that's what makes him even more essential to what they do. They have guys that are good. Xavier Tillman can play. Brandon Clark can play. But they don't have anybody that does what he does and the gravity that he provides for that offense. And his health is essential towards what they do. And them being able to achieve whatever it is they're going to end up achieving. But I would say, Jackson, the fact that he hasn't made it through a season yet, and, it looks like he has been totally and completely healthy, but that's always, for me, that would be the concern. And I think it's not just the fact that, he has had injury struggles, but more so how it would impact the roster. They've lost everybody. They've lost Anthony Melton. They've lost Ja Morant. They've lost Kyle Anderson. They've lost Dylan Brooks. Right. Yeah, you name it. They haven't lost him. And I'm telling you, even in the games when they get in foul, when he gets in early foul trouble or he doesn't have it that night, they're a different team. They can't lose him, not with the roster they have right now. They would have to go and find another stretch big.
Chris Vernon, he and Kevin O'Connor on the Mismatch. There's way more on the Grizzlies being real, some DeMar stuff, Chicago Bulls on the most recent podcast that I think came out yesterday. So You guys are 2 days a week, and anything else to promote there, Vernon?
No, I don't. I've got a local show, the Chris Vernon Show, which is like unbelievable. But
people know that. We don't even need to promote that.
I've been doing that for 20 years, Ryan.
He may look younger than Ja, but the birth certificate for Verno is always a little surprising. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ryan.